This is the DP2000, and it might be the key to unlocking better drums for your tracks. The idea is that instead of playing finger drums with your keyboard or little drum pads, you can actually drum on this thing, but it's still very compact. It also has built-in sounds, you can import your own samples, and a ton of other things which I'll get into. Big shout out to NUX for kindly sending this over to review. They're not paying for this video and therefore have no control over what I say here. There are some things I'm not crazy about, and I'll touch on those for sure. But to start out, let's see it in action. So for context, I play a lot of instruments, one of those being drums. I've played for most of my life. I've DIY'd a great feeling e-kit right behind me because I know firsthand what a difference it is between finger drumming and actually drumming on a surface. It's huge. But whether you play drums or not, a lot of people simply don't have the space or money for a big e-kit, so that's where I think something like the DP2000 is very promising. So let's talk about some of the standout features here. There are 8 drum pads on board, as well as additional inputs for a kick trigger, hi-hat control, and additional trigger which can be assigned to anything. Now, you can really dive in and make adjustments to the sensitivity and stuff like that for each individual pad, which is nice. I brought up the sensitivity just a bit when I first started playing, and I was super happy with that without having to get too deep into adjusting things. And because of the trigger inputs on the back, you can either just use this on its own or easily put together a mini kit with a kick pedal, cymbal, and hi-hat control. So in these demos, when I'm showing off the expandability aspect, I'll just be using pieces from my larger kit, but it works the same way no matter what triggers you're using. So if you want to keep things tight, you could buy one of those little pedals that you just step on, or if you spend a little bit more, you can get a kick tower that actually provides a surface for you to hit with a real kick pedal. They're gonna feel quite different, but the bottom line here is that you don't need them to make use of the DP2000. Those are really just if you want to get a bit closer to the feeling of playing a real kit while keeping things tight and simple. The MIDI is very flexible as well. You can either use the USB port to send MIDI to your computer, or you can use the MIDI in and out ports to connect to a drum module or an analog drum machine, and it's pretty flexible in that regard as well. You can choose what MIDI channel to use and even adjust each pad to send a specific message. So when I was first testing this out, the MIDI messages were just not assigned in a way that corresponded with Addictive Drums 2, which is often my go-to drum plugin. Luckily, I just went in, changed what notes each pad was sending, and it saved automatically, so now it just works as expected anytime I open it up. And there are a lot of onboard sounds here, so if you wanted to record the audio into your DAW, you could just come out of the line outputs on the back and plug into your audio interface. Because I'm a drummer, I'm pretty picky about the sound and feel of acoustic drum samples, and I would say these are not bad. The cymbal sounds don't feel great to me, but cymbals are very, very hard to get right. If I'm going for a natural, dynamic acoustic sound, I would probably just use this to trigger some drum software like Addictive Drums or whatever your go-to is. But it also has classic drum machine sounds built in, which I think are great. You can also load in your own samples really easily. I had some one-shots from Cymatics that I thought it'd be cool to test out here, so I put them on a USB drive into a folder called Wave Import, which is what the DP2000 is going to look for when you plug it in. Then you'll go to Menu, Wave File, and Import All Waves, or select the specific one you want. And now those one-shots are in my sound library. There are some built-in effects here, which I think are not bad, but the flexibility is a bit lacking, which I'll get into with the rest of the cons in a minute. In addition to this being a very powerful tool for directly affecting your productions, it also has a couple of pretty neat practice tools built in. Firstly, you have a built-in metronome, which you can adjust the tempo using the tempo knob and turn it off and on using the click button right underneath that. And you also have 3 different ways that you can have songs play through the DP2000. You can either load a song onto a USB drive and keep the drive plugged in, or a couple of other ways that I think make more sense for me personally. There's a 3.5mm aux input, which is convenient to have for this, but what really surprised me is that the DP2000 comes with a Bluetooth adapter that connects to the USB-C port. And before we get into the things I'm not so crazy about, I cannot forget to mention that the DP2000 comes with a gig bag, a set of sticks, a power adapter, a Bluetooth adapter, percussion stand adapter, and manual that is actually very helpful, which makes this whole thing an even greater value. Now, as much as I'm impressed by the DP2000, there are some things I'm not so crazy about. Firstly, it doesn't seem that the built-in effects can be assigned per drum pad. This isn't a big deal if you're wanting to put the effects on the entire kit and dial in the effects 1 and 2 levels to taste. But let's say you want to have a big spacey snare, but you don't want to add all of that to your kick or whatever. I feel that would be a very useful addition in a firmware update. Another funny thing is the way that the hi-hat control behaves here. No matter what preset you're on, as soon as you plug in a hi-hat controller, it forces you to have a hi-hat assigned somewhere on the unit, which makes sense in some ways. The problem is that by default, it throws it on pad 1, even though all of the presets use pad 7 for the hi-hat sound. You can go in and change it to where the hi-hat comes up on pad 7 instead, but you'd have to do this once for every preset that you use. Just found that a little strange. Also, the hi-hat control is basically just on and off rather than having a greater range of control, but that's a bit nitpicky if I'm being honest, especially for how affordable this is. Another big missed opportunity here is that you can't pan sounds left and right. I'd love to see that in a future update if possible. Lastly, there doesn't seem to be a way to copy and paste presets, and where that would be useful is if you have your MIDI settings or your sounds all dialed in, but you want a couple of kits that are just slightly different. As it is now, it seems that you'd have to build that out from scratch each time, so that would be a huge time saver if that was added in the future. Luckily, my only gripes with the DP2000 are having to do with the current firmware, so hopefully some of this stuff can be addressed in a future update. Also, if you mainly plan on using this as a MIDI controller, most of the cons that I mentioned shouldn't be a huge deal anyways. But with that being said, who is this really for, and is it even worth it? I think where the DP2000 really shines is its price point. At $369, you do get a ton of features, and when you look at the competition, I immediately think of the Alesis Sample Pad Pro, which is pretty old at this point and still more expensive than the DP2000. I actually used a Sample Pad Pro for a long time because I was in a tight space with a small budget, but wanted to produce better, more dynamic drum tracks. Not only is the DP2000 less expensive, I think it feels like a better quality product as well, especially with how nice the built-in display is. But the reason that I brought that up is that if you're someone, either a drummer or a producer who wants to learn drums but doesn't have the space for a big kit, I really think this is a good option. I would even recommend this to go alongside a full kit, because if you're using an acoustic kit, you could have this right next to it to trigger sounds that you can't get out of your kit. But if you have an electric kit, you could use this to provide additional triggers to your existing setup. So there's a lot of uses for this. There are definitely better options if you want to spend a lot more money, but if you're not bothered by anything that I said in this video, then I don't know that it would be worth you spending the $1,000+ for those other options over this. If you have any questions about the DP2000 that I didn't go over in this video, leave a comment down below and I'll see if I can get that answer for you. Also, if you end up wanting to check out the DP2000 for yourself, I do have an affiliate link below, and if you happen to purchase anything through that link, I do get a small cut without you having to pay anything extra. So it's a great way to support this channel anytime you buy new gear. Also, make sure and hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for hanging out.